Paths to the Present has been presenting links to the past since the year 2000. Over the years, we've worked hard to present stories about Montgomery County's rich history. And you know, some of those are worth seeing again. We combed our archives for segments to repackage for you today. So sit back and relax while we rewind. Hi, I'm Gail Strait of Paths to the Present. We dug deep in our archives and located some oldies but goodies. Today's show begins by going way back in time before this county existed. With a population approaching 1 million, it's hard to imagine that Montgomery County was once wilderness with very few people living here. But that's how it was when the first English settlers began to arrive. This first segment comes from 2001 and tells the story of how Montgomery County got its start. In 1632, King Charles I named this land and territory around it for his wife Maria. Maryland, as it was called, was granted to Sir George Calvert, the first Lord Baltimore, who died soon after. The development of this new colony quickly fell to his son Cecil, the second Lord Baltimore, who, within a year, sent the first expedition to colonize this land, first settling in St. Mary's City. Mary Kay Harper, Executive Director of the Montgomery County Historical Society, explains the reason the colonists moved on from there.
Well, the settlers were very interested in expanding, and they were all settled in southern Maryland, and you always wanted more land for tobacco, and they could see all this empty land, and they were very daring and courageous people just to come across the ocean to start with. And so that's how it began to go in, and what happened is they just kept expanding. The landowners in southern Maryland saw the opportunity of getting all this acreage for very, very little investment, and the only thing they had to do was to get a tenant farmer on it somewhere. And that's what most of this was developed as. It's always been land speculation in Montgomery County.
These early tenant farmers built 1 or 2 room log homes where they lived only during the months that they were working the land. The purpose was to send goods back to southern Maryland and ultimately back to Britain.
Maryland was one of the crown colonies. The king appointed the governor. He had an advisory council that helped him decide. He made all the decisions, but they did advise him. The counties were divided up. There were original counties, of which we were part of Prince George's County, which was an original county. And they had a sheriff who levied the taxes and justices. And the court really was the ruling body in the counties, more or less, though all the laws, of course, and edicts came from the governor.
As this area northwest of the Chesapeake Bay continued to grow, small settlements began to appear, serving the settlers as well as travelers who were passing through. Right here in what is now Rockville stood a tavern that figured prominently in our county's history. Peerless Rockville's executive director, Eileen McGuckian, explains.
In 1774, there were about 100 people living in a settlement, which was loosely known as Hungerford's Tavern, because that was the main landmark here. We were on the western frontier of the colony of Maryland. We were part of Frederick County, which had been established in 1748 because so many people had moved up from the lower part of Maryland. We were on the road between Fredericktown, which was the capital of Frederick County, and Georgetown, which was the main port. And tobacco farmers in this area were used to shipping their tobacco in huge hogsheads down to the port of either Georgetown or to Bladensburg. And at the point where the roads to Bladensburg and the Great Road down to Georgetown intersected was where Charles Hungerford's Tavern was.
As colonists from all over this new world were growing dissatisfied with the taxes levied by Britain, Hungerford Tavern became a hub of political activity. On June 11, 1774, people from Lower Frederick County gathered there and developed the Hungerford Resolves, which began like this.
Resolved unanimously That is the opinion of this meeting that the town of Boston is suffering in the common cause of America. Resolved unanimously that every legal and constitutional measure ought to be used to all Americans.
They were just trying to redress the grievances. They were saying that the British ought to treat the colonies more equitably.
Will be to break off all commerce with Great Britain and the West Indies until the said act be repealed and the right of taxation given.
They also wanted to make sure that the information that the Hungerford resolves were inserted in the Annapolis Gazette so that everyone could know that Lower Frederick County indeed was having the same sentiments. So the Hungerford resolves in their entirety, and this is how we know how they read, were described in the Annapolis Gazette and advertised in there on June 17th, which was just a couple of days before delegates from all over Maryland met in Annapolis to really start the chain of events that led to the Continental Congress and the Declaration of Independence and the Revolutionary War. So this is our little piece of the Revolution.
Soon after the colonists won independence, Montgomery County was born.
Well, by 1776, the area that was Frederick County had grown so large in population and just land mass, not growing in land mass, but there was more land mass to cover with the governing bodies, that the general legislature decided to form 3 counties from Frederick County. And they divided out Frederick County into our county and Washington County. And the reason they're named Washington and Montgomery County are that they were named for war heroes, since this was 1776.
During the American Revolution, Richard Montgomery was the first general to be killed in battle. He died at this spot in Canada, having never set foot in Montgomery County. Montgomery County was born on September 6, 1776. Then it spanned the land between the Potomac River to the west and the Patuxent River to the east. At the southern end, it began at the east side of Rock Creek Park and ran northward to the line connecting the mouth of the Monocacy and Pars Spring. At the time, Georgetown was the biggest city. However, it was not the spot for this new county's seat.
When you look at a map of Montgomery County, you see an established town known as Hungerford's Tavern in 1776, on an established road, actually at a crossroad of another established road, and it became a natural for the county government to put its county seat there.
Hungerford's Tavern in the town of the same name functioned as the county courthouse until 1779. It wasn't until 1801 that the town was given the name Rockville. But Montgomery County had not yet finished forming. In 1791, it changed again when the District of Columbia was established.
It's a very interesting story, and it's still about land speculation, because at the time of the formation of the federal government, there was a lot of jockeying about where the nation's capital would go. And of course, some people wanted it in New York and some in Philadelphia, and George Washington wanted it here. He thought this was the middle of the country and it was close to his home. And so people lobbied and did all kinds of things, and they decided to carve out a square from Virginia and Maryland. And that is why Montgomery County looks different today, because when they carved it out, not only did we lose Georgetown, which was our only port, but we lost the area all the way over from Georgetown over to the Anacostia.
In 2008, both Mary Kay Harper and Eileen McGuckian will step down from their executive directorships. Each was a continuous source of support and encouragement for us at Paths to the Present. We will miss them and wish them luck in their future endeavors. Our next segment comes from 2003 and focuses on the Hyattstown Mill. In the 19th century, milling was a major industry here in Montgomery County. That's because our geography is particularly well suited for the activity. We sit on a piedmont that gently slopes to our east, making our streams run swiftly. So there was a time when mills were everywhere. There were grist mills, sawmills, lumber mills, and bone mills. Today, more than 80 mill sites have been identified in Montgomery County, and Hyatts is the best preserved. Mike Dwyer, former historian for the Montgomery County Department of Parks, led us on a tour.
We're in the middle of Little Bennett Regional Park near Hyatts, Maryland in upper Montgomery County. This is Little Bennett Stream, and you can see where the stream was backed up here, forming a natural bowl about 5 or 7 acres, which created an impoundment or a dam for the water supply for Hyatts Mill and a number of water-powered enterprises further downstream. After the dam, a hand-dug race channeled the water through a steady supply downstream, and we'll visit that site next. We're looking at the overgrown remnants of a mill race, typical of the evidence that you find of mills in the park in this day and age, many years after the mills were abandoned. They used to contain the water supply that was drawn off the dam, however. They were built for the most part by slave labor, and they were designed to be built on the hillside above the floodplain, so they would channel the water in a steady measured course down to the mill where it would power the wheel as it spilled over it. As the water came flowing down the head race, it met this point here close to the mill where there was a sluice gate that controlled the flow of water over the wheel. It was channeled through first a wooden flume, later this concrete and metal pipe flume that you see here, and it spilled over the water wheel, which turned the power of the gears inside the mill, which in turn rotated the millstones that ground the grain. The water then spilled out into the tail race and back into the stream. What you're looking at is the tail race at Hyatts Mill. This is where the water, the spent water that flowed over the wheel, went back into the main stream, had to flow slowly enough so that it didn't back up. It didn't flood the stream, but it didn't back up under the mill wheel itself. It flowed back on down where it joined the main branch down about 1/4 mile or so.
Inside the mill, most of the workings have been removed, but its historical feel remains. Still visible are the grain chute on the ceiling and the wheel jack on the wall. Wheel jacks were used to hoist the millstone for cleaning and dressing. This drawing illustrates the inner workings of the mill. Water turned the wheel, activating a series of gears which made the millstone go around. On this site, we have a rare example of both the mill and the miller's house still intact. The mill is a 3-story frame structure sitting on a stone foundation. It was built in 1798, and for more than 100 years, it functioned as both a saw and grist mill. The wheel is long gone, however, this is what it looked like in the 1940s. Up the hill is the miller's house. This frame 2-story building actually predates the mill. The original millstone now serves as its front stoop. For over a century, milling was a major industry here in Montgomery County. Today, we are able to appreciate this legacy thanks to the many mill sites uncovered by Montgomery County's Department of History and Archaeology. Today, the fully restored Hyatts Mill is a thriving arts center. Known as the Hyatts Mill Arts Project, it offers exhibitions, poetry readings, a summer film festival, music, as well as classes and workshops. For more information, check out their website at www.hyatstownmill.org. Well, that's it for now. I'm Gail Street. Thanks for watching.